and welcome back to the Our Moment podcast. This is me, Exquisite Williams, and today we're kind of going to be going through finally part 2 Discord of Legendborn. And today we have a special guest. As you all know, I've been running the Our Moment in-person book club as well. And you've already met Jonay, but I decided I wanted more than one person. And I've just been pressuring them. And finally, someone gave in to the peer pressure. So I'd like you guys all to meet Deven. Deven, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, I'm Deven. As Exquisite mentioned, I am in the book club. So that's been a really fun experience.
Well, you can go ahead and talk a little bit about the experience. We have some time before we have to get into part 2.
Okay. It's been really nice being able to read the book and then criticize the characters with other people and not just be thinking in my head oh my gosh, this person sucks. Yeah.
Miss Dion, if you ever end up listening to this, he does not mean that.
Not all. No, I like them. You did a good job on making some unlikable characters.
Yes. And seeing characters, we're going to actually get into part 2. Part 2 is called Discord. And Deven, why don't you tell us, why don't you start us off? How does part 2, start? What goes on in part 2?
So, part 2 starts where we picked up from part 1, where, Nick and Bree have decided to make their little agreement on, oh yeah, I'm going to help you infiltrate my, family lineage organization. Mm-hmm. That's no problem at all. And Bree is finally getting into this initiation because she's like, I gotta figure out what happened to my mom.
Yeah. So a couple episodes ago, I went through and I gave us a bunch of new vocabulary. Go back if you didn't listen to those episodes. It was the first one in the whole part 2 part. And so when we enter, last we left them, Nick is all like, okay, you know what? I got to reclaim my title because I need to help Bree. And we're like, okay, what title? And he gives her all these rules before they can even start and go into competition. So his first rule was to stay away from Selwyn. Because he's like, I don't know, Selwyn's kind of on to you. And then he gives her some other 2 rules. They're important. She says. Do you remember the rules?
Oh gosh. Let's see. Obviously the first one was Sel. The second one was, oh my god, it's
yeah, she just has to remain ignorant of their world. He's like, hey, you need to make sure people keep her head down.
There we go.
She needs to disappear. If you can hear the turning of the pages, listen, I know this, but I know this. You just gotta trust.
They just kind of they blend in with the story.
Yeah. And she's gotta keep their secret.
Yeah.
That's it. But she gets into the house, and that's when they start telling her some things, and she's like, whoa. They start learning some secrets. So she finds out that King Arthur is definitely a real person. And yeah, he had these legions of warriors. And the first thing she does is they're giving her a tour of the house, and she finds these manacles that Merlins used to use. Merlins, once again, are the magical people. They used to use these to actually hunt people, And she's kind of she's stressed about that because she's like, oh, they be hunting people in this. And what if they know me? And then we get to the meeting, and that's when they're introducing all the pages or whatever. And let me tell you, all the pages are all these white people. And then Victoria, who, remember I introduced you guys to Tor, she's one of the leaders there. She's not a page, she's a scion. And she's like, this is our most diverse page class ever, which is, Deven,
not a huge accomplishment given the fact that it's one person. But here we are.
So then Selwyn, they gather all the new pages, and Selwyn mesmers them to take away their sight. And Nick is like, you need to let him do it. Don't let him know that you are immune to this. And so when they take away the sight, where do they go? What happens?
So they go into this forest basically. Talk loud. I'm sorry. So they go into this forest basically, and they're they're about to start the next trial process thing or whatever. Do I go into?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so
yeah. Well, this is all spoilers. They've been sufficiently warned if they're listening to my podcast. We're in spoiler territory.
Okay. Sel starts brutalizing Bree. He runs up and just tosses her to the ground, just pushes her. And he's like, "You're a demon. I really truly believe you're a demon."
Especially because this is his third time seeing her, and he's like, "There are no coincidences, not in our world. Why are you coming up?" And this is where we meet good old Mr. Davis, who is Nicholas's dad, and he's like the leader of the UNC Chapel Hill chapter of the order. And yeah, so you meet him, and he's like, "Selwyn, what are you doing?" Like, and Sel's like, "There's a risk. I have to protect him." And Mr. Davis is like, "Dude, if your senses are all out of whack, can you really be the King's Mage? Can we really trust you to look after the King's Mage?" And at this point, Brianna doesn't know who the King's Mage is. So it's like, okay, yeah. So Sel's mesmer wears off, and they enter this like clearing. Oh my gosh, I need to go shopping. I think that's what that means. And Lord Davis starts giving this like long like intro, like, "Hey, this is what we do. You're a squire, and if you get to become a squire, you have to look out for your knight. And when they're awakened, you'll get the oath and be bound to them forever." So, which is like, ooh, okay.
It's a little terrifying.
And Bree is like, okay. And then so they're going through, and they're like oathing all the like pages to give them the sight. And as we all know, Brianna already has the sight. Like, and she doesn't know why she has it, but she can already see. So Nick tells her, like, you need to focus, so when it comes to you, you don't like lose, like you don't like let them know you didn't actually have to take the spell or whatever. So all the pages ahead of her in line are like going through, and they're like, "My name is Greer Leighton Taylor, child of Holton Fletcher, vassal to the line of Lamorak." And, you know, like I said last time, in the other previous episode, and maybe you want to go back and review this episode for terminology, vassals are the families that serve the knights. They just really want to get in good with the thing, because they have a lot, with the order, because they have a lot of what's it called?
Financial investment, basically.
Yeah, they get a lot of favor and all that stuff. So when it's Bree's turn, she doesn't have a vassal, so she's just kind of like, "I'm Brianna Irene Matthews, daughter of Edwin Simmons Matthews," and she's got no line, she's got no heritage, quote unquote. I say no heritage to them. She has no heritage. We're not gonna say she has no heritage entirely.
She just doesn't have like a long table of ancestors.
Exactly, which we'll actually get into in a bit. And they tell them, they're like, "Hey, if you break this oath, you're going to be completely blinded, you're going to be excommunicated, and will be total mesmerized." And she's like, "Fine, all right." So she notices that if you are a page, you've been brought forward by somebody else. So like when they went up and was like, "This is who I am. I'm the vassal line Lamorak. This person brought me forward." So when Brianna does it, Nick is the one who brings her forward. And mind you, when Nick comes back, everyone's super excited, and Bree has no idea. Why is everyone excited that Nicholas is back? So they're like, "Who brings Brianna forward?" And Nicholas is like, "Me, Nicholas Martin David, scion and heir to King Arthur Pendragon." So Nick is like a whole king, basically, and that's why everybody's like, "Oh my god." And Brianna is pissed that he didn't tell her anything, and he's like, "What was I supposed to tell you? You weren't even supposed to be back here." And then what happens today?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think which specific part. Let's see.
The end, like the.
Oh my god. So Hellhounds. I'm sure Exquisite has mentioned those in the past, because they had the ones from part 1. A Hellhound pops up, and you know, they're like mildly threatening. You know, they got the saliva that burns your skin, that kind of thing. So just, you know, mid-tier enemy. So one of those pops up, and everybody is like, "Pages,
Run.
Go back to the place. Everybody get in your defensive position. Be ready to attack." And Bree holds still. Bree freezes.
Because she's scared.
She's like, "Whoa, look at all their magic." And they're like, and Nick is like, "Bree, leave. Like go."
And Bree's like, "Okay." And she finally runs. But then she gets caught by an ukel, which is like, imagine the giant human, but like not human. The real creepy. Imagine the scariest thing you can think of. And it captures her, and it's like, "You're going to help us." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" and it picks her up and it brings her back to where all the all the scions and all the people who know how to use ether. It brings her back to them, and it's like, where's the Pendragon? And Sir Davis is like, it's me. And the demon's like, you were definitely lying. And Nick is like, it's me. And it picks up Nick, and it also picks up his dad.
Oh my god! No! Let me tell you the choreography for this fight. So the monster is like, where are the people who I'm actually the important ones, the kings? So Mr. Davis steps up. I don't know why he does. He has his little sword. He thinks he's about to do something, and the demon swats him, like breaks his spine in two places, has him crumpled on the floor. And then Cell comes in and takes him down. Easy.
It was bad for him. Cell had help from Bree. Bree was like, oh no, he's got Nick. So Bree goes running at him. And then Cell this was at the same point.
No, I mean, after the dad goes down, Cell takes the monster down.
Yeah.
And he's like, Nick, don't come over here. And Nick is like, so I'm going to run over there.
Nick is like, my dad.
My father. He runs over there. Cell's ankle gets broken. Nick gets picked up by the skull and slammed against the concrete and immediately done, obviously.
And then, that's when Bree's like, whoa, not my man, who's not my man, but that's my man, you know? And then you got Cell, who's at his neck, and the body went one way, and the head went the other, and Bree passes out. Because, of course, Bree passes out. Right. Who else? I would also pass out, I think.
It was a pretty hectic moment.
Yeah, so she comes through in the infirmary, and Nick and his dad are both, passed out, and you got our good boy William, who works in the infirmary, and he's a scion of Sir Gawain, which means he's the healer, and he's been awakened, so he's been called. He's got all his powers that come with his heritage, and he's helping people out. And William is telling Cell I need you to get away from
my patients.
Get away from my patients. And Cell's like, that girl's a demon. And William's like, oh my gosh, I need you to get out so she can heal. And then Selwyn leaves, and then William's like, okay, he's explaining some things. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And William's like, did Nick not tell you our history? Oh my God, he's trying to get you killed.
Yeah, pretty much.
So then we get into the full history. Well, and so first they have to go down to the basement, and William is asking her how's her arms and stuff doing, let me see, are you in pain? And he tells her about ether, and he's like, ether is everywhere and we can harness it. This is their magic. And his magic is kind of it's cold to her, but it's helpful, and it's and he tells her she's acclimating fast for a once born. She's pretty good at learning this whole thing. And he takes her down to a basement. And what's in this basement, Devin?
Is this where the wall is?
Uh-huh.
So there's a wall for their ancestors where they have everyone and all their lineages, all up to the original cast of Arthur's
It's
castle.
called the Wall of Ages. And on this wall, this is where we get into I'm sorry, y'all heard that. This is where we get into the origin. This is where Dion, I think, is really smart, because it's we are getting exposition dumping for 3 full pages, but it's really good exposition, so I don't mind it. I actually really enjoy it. I love the part in books where they tell you why their magic happens. And there's a line on this big huge wall, and it says the line is law, and it says it in Welsh, and I'm not even gonna bother trying to pronounce that. I'm so sorry to any Welsh people. I can't do it. And so William translates, the line is law. The order and vassal colonizers were a blended bunch: Welsh, English, Scot-Irish, and Germans. But 6th century Welsh is where Arthur shows up. So Welsh is the order's language. And so then he tells us the lore, and he tells us that potential scion children are automatically taught the lore 3 times. They're taught it as little kids, they're taught when they get older and start training, and then they're taught it again. So basically they hear it all the time. But for other people, they have to learn it. And usually it's about the time they turn 16. So and I'm just going to read directly from the book. It says, at the Round Table's peak, Arthur had over 150 knights at his command, but over time, the Shadowborn Wars, our fight with the Shadowborn, because there's another word here, and I just can't say it, it cut the number down to only the 13 strongest knights, the original, and Merlin. And Merlin and Arthur feared what would happen to the world if the table were to fall. So Merlin made a spell called the Spell of Eternity, a powerful casting to magnify the remaining knights' abilities and bind their spirits to their bloodline, so that their heirs could forever stand against the darkness, so that the table would live on immortal. So when their knights awaken, the knight spirit lives again, and that's why they call those outside the lines once born, and why the people who are the scions and in the lines are Legendborn. And then Bree says something that I found just like really profound. She talks about how she's looking at this wall and she's like, where's my family's wall? We can't trace our lineage back. And it's just like, that's just one of the like, one of the tragedies of slavery is that history and that connection was taken away. Meanwhile, all these people can trace their lineage all the way back to 6th century Welsh. Like, it's crazy. And then Bree comes to this decision. She's like, well, you know what? I'm my family scion. Like, she says this to herself, and it's really good. And William tells us some more stuff about, like, the different powers. And I also went into the powers that they get in the last episode, so I'm not going to rehash that. And he tells us, you know, all these characters or whatever. And while she's looking at the wall, she notices something, and she's like, what is this? What is it?
So she sees these, like, scratch marks by one of the, So the wall has, like, whoever the person is, and then, like, their scion, and of course it also has the Merlins. So for the King Arthurs, you'll have your Merlin next to them. So next
Their
to
King's
Davis's
Mage.
name, next to him, the King's Mage has, you know, a stone for the current person, and then there are scratches around it, and she's like, was that always there? Like, what's going on?
And William's like, maybe they got sloppy.
Yeah, William's like, oh, you know, it's whatever. And she's like, no, this wall is perfect except for this one spot.
Right? So it's like, well, that happened. And then there's also when we find out about the abatement. So basically when a knight is awakened, and they get awakened in the spell that Merlin did, he's like, you have to be between the ages of 16 and 22. So that is why the kids in this book are children and not adults. That was Tracy justifying why this is a young adult story. But when you're awakened, all that power from the night, it takes a huge toll out of you, and you die young. Typically, even if you've aged out of when you can use it, you still die young. It's sad. It's sad. It's sad. We also find out that we had an awakening happened at the ceremony, didn't it?
We did.
Who got awakened?
And that was, let me see.
What? It's not Sarah and Tor. Tor's not awakened. She's too high up on the line. Pardon. Pardon. It's the Sir Lamorak line. Yes, Sir Lamorak line. The 3 arrows and the speed. It's great. It's one of those. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. All you know is that awakenings are happening. And we find out from Lord Davis that there's also been other monster attacks going on. And it's crazy. So they're like, you know what, Bree? I think it's time for you to go home. Nick is up and gone home because he thought Bree left. So Bree goes home, and she gets home, and she's absolutely a wreck. And Alice is like, Bree!
Oh, my God.
Why are you looking like that? And she's like, you know, just a little, you know, secret society stuff. Yeah. And Alice is freaking out. And they kind of apologize to each other for that fight they had in part 1. And it's like, it's a sweet moment. And Deven just gave me a look.
It's almost sweet, except, look, now Alice, I can understand where she's coming from. You know, from a person who doesn't know what's going on, you look at your friend, they look beat up, they look haggard, dirty.
They've been out all night.
Yeah, you're like, okay, like, are you okay? But Alice has this weird almost claim to Bree's time. And so when she's giving her apology, and she's like, you know, I'm so sorry for lashing out at you, and Bree apologizes back. I'm like, Bree, you have nothing to apologize for because you didn't do anything wrong. Yeah.
So they're like, you know what, I do need to get a shower. And so she goes into the community shower, and Alice comes with her, and she sits outside because she's trying to help her friend. She's trying to be a good friend, but Bree can't tell her anything. And Alice gets like upset about this, and she's like, you know what, fine, don't tell me, whatever. And Bree's like, I just need you to trust me. And Alice leaves. And then when Alice leaves, and boom, Brianna bursts into flames.
Yes.
Blood red flames.
It was she was looking down. She was like, that looks like fire, like on my hands. And she was like, whoa, it doesn't like burn, but it's like, and at first she thought it was her like breaking the oath. She was like, this is me dying. And she's like, no, wait, it doesn't hurt.
She's like, it's coming from inside me. Yeah. Like, it's not. She's like, what is happening? If anyone sees this, they're going to think I'm a Shadowborn. I need to get control over it. So the way she does this is the same way that she tries to get control of after Bree. So I highlighted. I didn't highlight it. I wrote brackets around it because I thought it was so nice. And she says, I squeeze my eyes shut. I find my bearer, shape it into every image I've ever used to contain after Bree in her explosive, dangerous rage, and then some. And that's how she gets control of the flames. And it's like, oh, so she's associating after Bree with the flames. Interesting. So when she wakes up, and the next morning, she's got a call on the phone.
Oh, my gosh.
Who's on the phone?
So it's her dad because Alice snitched on her.
Snitched bad.
Said, your daughter needs help. Call her in the morning ASAP. And the dad's like, Alice, let me know what's going on. I'm really thinking you should come home. And Bree's like, no, I'm going to stay here. So he's like, okay. I'm going to make you a deal. You can stay there if you see a therapist.
Therapy. He was like, go to therapy.
You're going
And he's
to
like,
therapy.
guess what? I already signed you up for therapy. And I found you a black therapist. And we're like, yes. She's finally getting some therapy because old girl needs so much help.
She needed so bad.
She's so sad and she doesn't want to talk about it. And so she meets her therapist. Her therapist is named Patricia. And she's like, I can't really tell how old Patricia is. And it turns out Patricia went to school with her mom. And she was aware of her mom. So they knew each other. And they meet at this place called the Unsung Founders Memorial. And I want you guys to go look it up. Because what the Unsung Founders Memorial is this memorial of a bunch of black people lifting up a table. Like this slate of granite. And they're kind of like... that's what UNC created to like honor the black people that built... the slaves that built the school. And Patricia's like... I mean... they acknowledged the enslaved who built the place, and we get this memorial, and it's something, she says, I suppose. It was a class gift, not unimportant, but how can I be at peace when I look down and see that they are still working? And I was like, ooh.
You have to almost, because when you see the table, it is a really gorgeous table, and you have to push from your mind that a white person is probably eating on it. You have to, because that was my first thought, is we still doing this up to these shenanigans.
But also what's also important about the table is that Brianna sees Mage Flame around the table and she can see it, and she doesn't say anything at first, and she's kind of like, and her therapist's like, so what's up with you? And she's like, oh, I came here with my friend, and she's trying to like kind of be shy, and then her therapist is like, I'd like to talk about your mother. And she's like, you knew my mom, right? And she's like, well, I did, but not very well. And then she's like, it feels bad. And then she's like, do you know why I asked you to meet me here, Bree? And Bree's like, no, I don't know, Patricia. And she's like, well, these are gardens, have a bunch of root energy. Are you not a wild crafter like your mother? And Brianna is like, whoa,
Wild
pump
crafter,
the brakes.
like,
what is a wild crafter? And Patricia's like, oh? And she's like, wildcraft is short for root craft, And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, my mom manipulated energy. And Patricia's like, yes.
Patricia takes a minute. She's like, maybe I shouldn't have.
Yeah, she's like, maybe I shouldn't have said anything.
Am I overstepping if your mom didn't tell you about this?
Because she's like, the power is passed matrilineally. So you learn from your grandmother. You learn from your mom. And she's like, oh, your mom didn't say anything. Maybe I shouldn't. And she's like, you need to tell me what you know. And she's like, okay. So, and she tells her that it's in their history. It's kind of like a heritage. And so she didn't know. And Patricia, like, when she was an undergraduate and she talked to Bree's mom, she asked her if they should practice together. And Bree's mom was like, no. And Patricia's like, well, I expected that because it could be something that's just private in their family. And so it's like, okay. And then Bree kind of tells her, she's like, I can see ether. And Patricia's like,
you can what?
What word did you just say?
So Patricia has a pause for two reasons. The first one, she's like, what? She looks at her like she said a slur. She's like, why do you mean ether? That's not what our people call it.
Yes.
And the second, she's like, you can just see it. Like, that's not how our magic works. So she got hit with a two-piece.
Yeah, and so then like their meeting ends with her kind of being like, your mother's people don't use the word ether. We use the word root because we developed it. We don't.
Yeah.
She's like, the people who use the word ether, you might want to stay away from them. So then that's the end of their that's the end of their like meeting thing. And then Alice, so she goes back with Alice and they're like, can we get dinner together or whatever? And she's like, fine, Alice, okay. And then she's like, let's go out to eat. And she's like, I can't. I got order stuff to do. I got a dinner night. And Alice is like, can you tell me more? And she's like, nah. And so she's just lying to her best friend. And it makes her sad, but it's what she's got to do. So they go and she goes back to the house. And when she gets back in the house, they have to have like this dinner thing. And isn't this the point where, oh, well, she goes to Nick's room. She meets Nick at his room, which is like, girl, you're 16. Nick is 17, but still. And Nick tells us what happened to him and why he was protesting. He did not want to be the king. Like, he didn't want to be King Arthur. And he's like, I don't want Camlin to come, but I have no choice because... and he tries to get her to back out because he's like, if you become a squire, like, you have to fight in Camlin, too.
Yeah.
Like, and she's like, nah, I gotta be here. Like, I'm sorry. Like, the fear, all this stuff, like, I can't handle it. I have to find out what happened to my mom. And then she tells him, she's like, I know about the abatement. I know I might die if this all happens. And she's like, I know you might die. And he's like, look, Camlin may not come, you know?
Right.
The last time Camlin happened was during the Civil War. You can't tell, but I'm doing like an eye thing.
It's,
it was during the Civil War.
Very chill for you, Nick. But for the rest of us, we're like,
and then Nick says something. Nick says that because they mentioned the abatement, and Nick is like, my father says that focus is death's most precious gift. And then Bree says death doesn't give gifts. And then she's like, and then she asks him, she's like, don't you want to be king? Don't you want glory? And he's like, I don't want people to die. I don't want the world to need a king and all that stuff. So then they leave his room and they come downstairs and there's about to be a big dinner and all these women walk up in here and they look at Bree and they're like, hey,
grab a tray.
Grab a tray. And Bree's like, whoa.
I don't work for you. I don't work here.
This is not what we do. Who? And so then she has that like racist encounters with these people, and one of the mothers that was there, they're called the Order of the Rose, and they're basically like the mothers of vassal families. And one of the children, his name is Vaughn, and that was his mom that was being racist. And so they're having dinner, and all the pages are at one table, and and we're talking, and they were talking, and Nick had told Bree. Because she had asked him about, like, the manacles and, like, what was going on. And he's like, the order is not above the world's brutality. He was like, for a long time, the Order of the Rose had to be a thing because they didn't want girls in the order. And she's like, I thought it just went to the firstborn child. He was like, it does. Mm-hmm. So guess what the order did when there was a girl born? They were killing little girls.
It's actually something really, especially given what Patricia let us know, that the line of Morgaine is matrilineal, and then the order was very much for the patriarchy.
What's the line of Morgaine?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So the line of Morgaine are a group of Merlins who defected from, the King's Table, Legendborn, that whole group. They were like, we don't really like what you're doing. And they don't give us the exact reasons, but they did dip. So the Legendborn group is kind of like, if we don't like them, we don't approve of them, and if violence happens when they're nearby, it's fair game. If they end up 6 feet under, that's their own fault. And it's
kind of sad. It's
really sad.
But okay, so she's at this dinner, she's sitting with the pages, and a lot of them are looking at her. She's the only black girl there, and she's like taking it all in. And there's this one dude named Vaughn who basically was like, what you doing here? I bet you're using your feminine wiles to get with Nick. And she's like, whoa, what? And he's like, and then he says, affirmative action BS. Mm-hmm. And Bree is like, I am not going to take this. At first, she's like, I'm going to be quiet. Nick told me to disappear. And then she's like, you know what? For bigots, it doesn't matter how or why I'm actually here. It's the fact that I'm here is wrong enough. Mm-hmm. And then she says, I'm not going to disappear, and I don't want to keep my head down. And she absolutely goes off on
She tears
Vaughn.
him apart.
She tears him a new one. And she goes on and and she's like, I'm not the fault for your insecurities. And Vaughn's like, my insecurities? And she's like, you're careless. You question the judgment of the Scion of Arthur. You think he brought me forth without good reasoning? And she was like, you're displaying insubordination, disloyalty, and fear. There's no power or strength in what you're saying. And Bond's like, I'm gonna jump out. And he tries to fight her, and the other ones catch, the other pages catch him, and Bree's like, okay, none of the Scions saw that, because they're all the way over on a different table, except, good old Selwyn, who is watching them. Mm-hmm. And in this moment, Bree, Tracy Dion has Bree think something that I thought I like highlighted in green because I thought it was really profound. And she goes, I disrupt those people and you do too. You've been doing it since you walked in the door. I like disruptors and rhythm breakers. We should start a club. And this is said to Bree by the Greer. And they say that because they're both different in some way. And there's also another girl, another person named Whitty. And Whitty is Hispanic but white passing. Yeah. So Whitty is also a disruptor. So they're like, you know what? We're gonna be together. We're gonna hang out. Let's make a club. And I don't know. I thought that was really, really nice. And I don't know. I think I may make that the tagline of our moment. Like, we're the disruptors.
The disruptors. It's a nice talent.
It is. It's a nice talent. We make people think things. So then, moving quite along, because this is getting a little long. So Nick's dad, Lord Davis, gets up and he's like, hey, so we know that typically you have a long time to prepare for the 3 trials to become a squire. But guess what? We had a demon attack us. Another one of us was called last night. And people are saying they're seeing the lines of Morgaine. It was Felicity who was called. Felicity was called.
There we go.
She was called, and she's the line of Sir Lamorak. And he's like, so guess what? We got to accelerate the tournament because Camlin is coming, and people need squires. Like, I'm sorry, we gotta push it. And everybody's like, what? And so they're like, first round is tonight. And she's like, what? I have no time to prepare. And so they gotta walk through the woods again, and it's all dark. And Nick's like got her, and he's like, I'm gonna guide you to the challenge. Right. And he's basically like, he's telling her to take it one step at a time, and he's telling her about the line of Morgaine and what it is. And Deven already told us what it is, but it's basically their Merlin's gone bad, quote unquote, gone bad according to the order. Now, do we trust everything the order says? I don't know. We already know they're kind of shady.
Yeah, we know that they used to kill girls because they didn't want them to lead, so... Do we trust them? Exactly.
It's like, do we trust them? They don't like ether users who aren't within them. And Bree's like, okay, I know they kill people. I cannot let anybody know that I burst into red flames sometimes. So they're walking, and she tells Nick what happens at the table. And she's like, Vaughn said I was trying to get you with my feminine wiles. And Nick starts blushing. He's like, I wouldn't mind if you got your feminine wiles on me. And that's the part where I was like... And then she asked him, she's like, do you want me to be your squire? And he's like, that's for you to decide on your own. Right. And everybody's like, ooh. The audience goes, ooh. Because he kisses her knuckles. And then Cell pops down. Oh, and disrupts everything. And he threatens her again in front of Nick. And he's like, you got a silver tongue. I don't trust you. And he's just being very threatening. And she's fighting back. And
she really finds her backbone this chapter.
Yeah, like she's getting stronger. Like she's getting her feet under her. And they take her to an arena. And she's partnered up with this girl named Sydney. And it's the first trial. So what's the first trial, Deven?
Okay, so they are basically rescuing civilians. I did air quotes, you can see that. But it's like these dummy dolls that are 50 pounds that they have to carry to the safety gates while being chased by magic boars. The boars aren't going to trample or gorge them or anything. But
theoretically,
if you would have died, you fail, basically.
Or if you get any of your people hurt, you fail. So Bree and Sydney are kind of like watching, and they see they see Vaughn and his partner, they get past. Another 2 people get past. Whitty and Greer get past. And so she's like, oh, dang, what are we going to do? So she's like, you know what? And they come up with a good plan. Bree is a runner. So she grabs the people and she runs, and somehow she ends up distracting the boar. Sydney's really good with daggers, so she like throws them, and they actually do end up killing one of the boars. But then the other boar sets sights on Bree, and Sydney's like, you gotta run. And so Bree is smart, and she realizes that the boars can't see very well, but they can smell. So she like climbs up a tree, and she sits and waits as it's looking for her. And she sees Sydney like dashing across with other like their like mannequin people things. And she's like, okay. And she jumps down and she kills the boar by like letting gravity fight for her. And you know what? It's like, oh yes, everything's great. Bree passed. But a giant serpent has somehow gotten to Nick.
Like, we cut away, like, and we like look to the side, and Nick is wrapped by a giant anaconda.
A huge hell snake. That's what they call it. I'm not cursing mother because she's listening to this. So it's like, dang, what is happening? And then good old Selwyn fights the snake, and he kills it while the other Legendborns are also fighting. And once again, Bree doesn't run away. She never runs away. And at some point, you're kind of thinking she's a little stupid. It's like, really, Bree? Like, what's up?
A little slow.
She's a little slow. But she's smart. That's my girl. Anyway. But Nick is always getting caught up.
Nick has for someone who was raised to be so combat ready, he very much is not ever. I don't know if that ever changes in this book.
Not too much. Not too much. I think this is the last time he gets caught slipping.
Okay. Yeah.
I think this is the last time he gets caught slipping. He's more aware now. He's like, how's a giant hell snake thing come up on where there's a bunch of us? Like,
that's true.
Not too much on him.
Sel brought up. He was like, these things have never been able to strategize before. So what's going on?
Someone must be like listening to them. Like, so she stays and she talks to him. She goes to his room when he's getting like together, and this is where Nick tells her properly like what happened to his mother and like why he left. And so why did he leave?
So Nick's mom, she had a big heart. Obviously, Nick is her baby boy. So he would come back from training beat up.
Mind you, he's like 5 or 6.
Yeah, like
he
black
started his training
eye,
early.
Hurt, and they would always heal him. But seeing her son looking like that was it was getting to her. So she decided that she was going to run away with him and get him away from this life. The Order obviously didn't like that because he's their Arthur. So they took her, did a quick little mesmer on her.
Not even quick.
And vanished her.
She goes missing.
She goes missing.
And Nick is like, so my mom's gone, and I still have my dad, and I'm training with my dad. And they bring Sel in to start living with them. And they go to a park one day. And he sees his mother in the park, and he runs up to her and hugs her, and she's like, who are you?
Oh, it was so...
And that hurt him bad.
It's heartbreaking. Like, your own mother doesn't even know who you are because of these people.
Yeah, and Nick is like, I was so angry and furious, and Sel's living with me now, and he's just acting up. He doesn't like Sel. He doesn't want Sel around. Everything is like the loss of his mom. And for Bree, I think this is the first time she's like, he lost his mom too. Like, her mom is dead. His mom has literally lost him. She's alive, but it's like, there's more than one way somebody can die to you. She doesn't know who he is.
No longer his mother.
And it's like, he was just a kid. And that's like something that could really hurt you. And so Nick is like, he is so angry. He's angry at the ghost. He's angry at his dad. He's angry at everything. And he's like, you know what? I feel like even if Camlin comes, maybe I'm so unworthy that I wouldn't even be able to hear Arthur's call. And Sel told that to him. And Bree's like, I don't want Sel to be right, but I'm scared that he is. So anyway, she spends the night in his room. They didn't do anything. They just laid in the same bed.
They had such a nice bonding moment over losing their mothers. It was very much Zuko and Katara.
It was giving. They got mommy issues. It was giving Zuko and Katara. So he walks her back to her. He drives back, and then he's walking her back to her dorm room. kiss. And they have their first kiss, and Brianna is like losing her mind because it's so cute. It's so cute. Like, I'm sorry. Like, Deven is laughing at me, but you don't understand. Yeah, like, I'm telling y'all gotta read the book because it's so cute. Anyway, so so she gets back. Well, they get caught by like two other boys who are in the thing, and they're like Nick. And they see Bree, and they're just kind of like, we'll mind our business. We're just going to go. And so she gets back to her room, and she tells Alice about the kiss. And Alice is like, aw. And then she's like, I kind of got a date with Nick tonight. And she's like, it's not a real date, though. We're going to, like, this beer garden place. Which when she's 16, so she doesn't even think about how she's going to get in there. But she's like, yeah, we kind of have a date. And she's like, oh my God, what are you going to wear? And Alice is like, you got to send me a picture. I'm going home with my family this weekend, but send me a picture because it's Friday. Mind you, it's been like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
She just got to school. And she's got another meeting with her therapist. And her therapist is like, well, I deserve to tell you some things. Like, you need to know what root is. I can't just, like, leave you alone. Her therapist takes her to a cemetery. And she's like, why are we up in this cemetery, Patricia? And Patricia is like, well, this is where they bury people who died on campus, but there's also a bunch of unmarked graves. And that's of all the black people and the slaves that have died there. And for Patricia, she has family that are buried there.
Yeah.
And she goes there and she kind of like is explaining the root, and she's like, well, we give offerings to our ancestors to help us give it to us, like help us understand. And she's like, wait, are we gonna be walking on graves? And Patricia's like, yeah, but don't worry, we're gonna think
we already are.
We're already on graves. And she's like, the memorial, the unsung founders memorial is like nice or whatever, but all the blood and all that stuff, it's right here in the ground. And so she's like, don't worry. Like, even when you're walking on the grass, we'll thank them. Don't worry. So then she was like, it's not fair. Like, in her head, she's just thinking how unfair it is all this stuff is, like, happening. And Patricia, she's like, I don't even know who, well, not Patricia, but Bree says, I don't even know my ancestors. I don't barely know past my great-grandmother. And Bree, and then Patricia responds that, and I'm reading directly from the book again, lots of black folks in the States don't know their people more than 4 or 5 generations back, don't know names before the late 1800s, and why would they? We didn't exactly inherit detailed family records when we were freed, which makes Brianna think back to the family wall. And she's like, feels such a sour sense of betrayal. And she goes, I've never even met my grandmother. And it's like, I'm so sad. And Patricia's like, what? You didn't meet your grandmother? And she's like, no, she died before I was born. And then she asked her, she's like, are there aunts on her family side? Do you have great aunts? And she's like, no, I don't have any of that. And she's like, it's just reminding her of how lost she feels. And Patricia is like, hey, come on, just breathe. Because she's a therapist. She's actually a good therapist.
She's got the talent.
She's got the talent of a therapist. But then Patricia's like, okay, our people are root crafters, right? It's a natural element like any of the other elements. Just like William had explained earlier, ether is a natural element. And they all call it different things. And she's like, okay, so what I can do is we are going to go on a memory walk. Like, just come sit with me, take my hands, and I'll show you the root. And then the world twists and disappears, and that's the end of part 2.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, part 2 had some, like, part 2, I feel like, is the most exposition heavy chapter.
It is.
Part 1 builds us up to accepting the world. Part 2 tells us the world that we're in.
It adds the depth, because Patricia's like, this magic, or this, the root isn't, well, her version of it with the root is, this isn't ours to take. It belongs to the dead. And
we have to share it. We have to ask permission, and we have to honor them in order to get it.
We borrow it, and then we give it back.
Meanwhile, ether, they just took that stuff.
Like,
Merlin bound it to their bodies.
Take it out of the air. Like, he just grabs it. Mm-hmm. And so it's really, it should be thought-provoking to think about.
Yeah, it's like there's 2 different ways that they're all responding to this natural element. And we know the Order has a very violent history. We get more of that in part 3.
So much more. Good Lord.
No spoilers. No spoilers. We do get more of that in part 3, which next couple episodes I'm going to go into part 3, and we're going to talk about different things about it. Because part 3 we learn quite a lot. Like, quite a lot. So much. And it's great. But part 2 is important because we need... Part 1 is our building. Part 2 is really our foundation. We're really anchored in this world. And Tracy Deonn does a really good job of being like, this is why X, Y, Z happens. And we need it for later in the book. So that's why, like, this, like, little era of different podcast episodes, I was just giving y'all names of people and I was giving y'all definition of words because, my goodness, do those become so very important.
And they're so commonplace. You have to, like jot them down almost. Have, like, a little dictionary for
you have to be like, Unadeg means once born.
Unless you're Welsh, in which case this makes sense for you.
Unless you're Welsh. In which case, I'm so sorry that I just butchered your language and declared that I can't say.
Yeah, if this was Spanish, I would have had you. If it was Icelandic, I could have tried.
Icelandic? Oh my.
I know, I've been learning.
Devin's a person of many talents. You should see he just popped his collar, y'all. You didn't see it. But no, like, it's very exciting to think the book is just ramping up. And when I tell you it's ramping up, it's like, oh my gosh, there was a hell snake in this. It can't get any worse.
Ooh, does it?
We really start to see Nick and Brianna's relationship. They bond. They do talk. It's not just out of nowhere. But Bree constantly mentions that she feels her and Nick are just call and response. Like, she feels connected to him. And it's like, what is that connection? Because we don't actually know what Bree is. Like, we don't know why she can use these powers. We don't know what's going on. All we know is that she is at the school where her mom apparently went. Her mom apparently was a root crafter. She's apparently a root crafter. And she thinks her mom may have had something to do with the Merlins. Yeah. And she thinks the Merlin may have killed her mom. So, you know what? She's got to discover it. And honestly, I'm like, I want to discover it with you too because I'm real confused. Like, what's actually going on here?
Yeah, and we get a lot more questions than answers, but it makes sense. She's, been thrown into this world.
We are, like, the way it's written, we are with Bree every step. Not only are we in her head, but we're also like, what's going on? Like, when Bree's questioning something, we're questioning something. There's not a lot of dramatic irony here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun. Personally, me and Alice got beef. Because, like, okay, Alice may be a good friend or whatever, but you just called my dad on me.
I feel like that she crosses so many boundaries, and I get it. They're childhood best friends.
So many boundaries. Like, girl, what? Anyway, but that's going to do it for our episode because I feel like it's getting real long. Deven, thank you so much for coming.
It was great to be here.
Deven I forced him to speak out in our book club a lot, so I made him come. I think he enjoys his time.
I do. It's pretty fun.
Okay, Deven, where can they find you at? Can they follow you on social media anywhere?
I mean, they can. I don't post that much stuff.
Where's your at?
Let's see. Okay, I do have an Instagram. It's my name, Deven, with 2 E's. So Deven, period, IR. It means something in Spanish. I completely forgot.
Ear? IR?
Yeah,
it means
like,
to go. It's the verb to go.
No, hold on, no. It's a conjugation.
Like, yeah, ear is to go unconjugated. What do you mean?
No, I mean the whole, like, my name is a conjugation. Like, hold on, I'm going to look it up.
While he's doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and end our episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Join us next week as we finally get into part 3 and things get crazy. You can follow me at Exquisite Williams on Instagram, also at Exquisite Williams on YouTube, and on Twitter, I'm at Exquisite WILL. You can follow our podcast, Our Moment Pod, on Twitter. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're listening to on YouTube. Save the episode, share it with all the people you know. Thank you so much for listening. Have a nice day. Yes, and thanks, Deven, for joining us. Everyone give a round of applause. Okay, thanks. Bye.